Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Strickland, Pinehurst Mayor. This is the June 9th, 2020 regular meeting of the Pinehurst Village Council, and I call this meeting to order. For those of you who are either listening or participating in the Zoom telecast, if you want to make comments on any of the items that the council is talking about today or any other items, you may send an email to the following address, and those will be read at the end of the meeting. The email address is publiccomments@vopnc.org. publiccomments@vopnc.org. Please feel free to do that, and at the end of the meeting, the clerk will read any such comments that have been received during the meeting or in advance. As the second item of our agenda calls for reports from the village manager and the village council, I'll ask Jeff Sanborn, village manager, to make whatever report he wishes today. Jeff?
Thank you, John. To pick up on the theme from your last meeting, I've got two items I'd like to comment on today. The first is our ongoing reopening plan, or return to normal plan for the village and village staff. I think for everybody's reminder, it was a couple weeks ago that we brought all of our employees back into the workplace that had been teleworking. And starting next Monday, we will be opening the majority of our facilities to the public. That will include the Assembly Hall, the fire department, the front lobby of the police department, our public services office, for the typical types of walk-in services that we have always provided, with some minor modifications. The community center front doors will also be open, although the rooms won't be available for use or for rent for now, until we get a little bit greater relief from the governor with regard to meeting size limitations, and the same holds true for the Fair Barn. But otherwise, we're starting to move we're continuing to move in the direction of a return to normal with our operations in the village. The second thing I'd like to comment on is kind of the kickoff of our efforts to recognize our 125th anniversary here in Pinehurst. And I would note that we plan, I think by next Monday, to have the banners up downtown. We have 18 banners at pre-selected locations that will go up on light poles downtown that kind of highlight our 125th anniversary. And the second thing I would call attention to is the great work that Jack Farrell has done, or is in the process of doing. He's basically kind of writing a book on our history, kind of a short book, but complete with chapters. And every month he will be passing along 2 or 3 of those chapters to be posted on a designated spot on our Village of Pinehurst website. The first 2 chapters are up right now, and there's a link right on our front main page. Folks want to read all about the Village of Pinehurst and where we came from. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Jeff, thanks very much. My report includes some comments on discussions I've been having with 2 of our major stakeholders, and some other comments and things over the past week that have occurred. First of all, with respect to stakeholders, as we all know, the resort has reopened the Carolina Hotel. There's modest traffic there now. The golf courses remain open, and we hope that the resort cautiously and carefully will proceed along and bring their business back, which is, of course, a great benefit to the village. They too are celebrating this 125th year, and we look forward to continue work with them as the year progresses on this anniversary. The second stakeholder report has to do with First Health. I had an update from them on Friday. The operations here at the hospital and across the First Health network seem to be very well operating at this point in time. They have capacity in the emergency room, capacity in the hospital. They've begun to do many, perhaps not all, elective surgeries, which is helping to rebuild their business. Their supply chain is very strong from what I understand. And we're very happy that they are so present here and operating so well through these past 90 days of difficulties across the state and across Moore County. Earlier today, in a meeting of Partners in Progress, there was a presentation by a person who's involved in the biomedical engineering field. And he not only talked about the advantages of North Carolina and even our area here to smaller companies that are doing vaccine research, in fact, on the coronavirus, but unfortunately, he did make the comment that we need to all be aware of, and that is that the virus is still with us. Statistics actually in North Carolina continue to increase with respect to testing, which has uncovered more cases. That's a good thing in many ways, but we're not without risk. And furthermore, he said that it's likely in the fall that the risk scenario from the virus will still be with us and may likely increase. And that's a story that, of course, we've heard something about for some time. So the message to all of us in Village Hall and village government across to our residents is continue to be safe, continue to practice using masks, washing your hands, staying safely distant from others, and do your best to not spread the virus any further. The other comments I'll make really have to do with some support that our police department gave along with Southern Pines and Aberdeen to the Support for Humanity and Justice that the 3 police departments in planning with the other towns and over the last few days conducted last Thursday. I was able to ride along with one of the police officers who was assisting with the caravan. It was very, very well done. The police were very well received across all of the towns, and we're very lucky to have our police department being so engaged in such a hospitable and human way at a time of difficulty. So we're very proud of them, and I think other council members will want to speak to that point. That really concludes my comments, and I'll go next to Judy Davis for any comments you wish to make today.
Thank you, John. I definitely applaud the actions by our police force in conjunction with the other communities. It's really a wonderful thing to see all 3 municipalities coming together on a touching and important issue. So hats off to those folks for doing a good job for us all the time.
Any other reports, Judy?
No.
Jane Hogeman? Jane, you need your microphone, please.
Sorry, I just like to echo what Judy said and express my appreciation for our police force and for the way they are working together with our sister towns.
Thank you, Jane. Lydia?
All right, continuing the theme of 2, last week the CVB Board of Directors met via Zoom and they gave me a few minutes to discuss our 125th birthday. So I told them about what we're doing, show them the banner, showed them our little new logo. But also I got to listen in as they described a very aggressive digital marketing campaign they're undergoing to get the word out through Facebook. It was way above my head, but it was impressive. And if anybody wants to see that PowerPoint presentation, let me know and I'll try to get that. Also, continuing with the theme with the police, there's so much turmoil surrounding the police. So I reached out, law enforcement in general. So I reached out to Earl just to say, are you guys okay? And he sent me back a nice email, but he said, our local public is excellent to our staff. And he also said, it's very encouraging to know that our council supports our department and our efforts to keep this amazing community safe and secure. So just another hats off to our police department for being so great and to our community for being so nice and appreciative of our police department. So that's all I have. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Lydia. Kevin.
I hate to stay on the same train, but I got to ride with the chief and lead the protest. I was so impressed with the public. We live in such an amazing community. I was sitting in the car with the chief, and people were thanking me. I said, "Don't thank me. I'm just a guy riding." I had, I was getting emotional, And I wanted you to know that the chief invited Taylortown to lead with us through Pinehurst. So Pinehurst and Taylortown led the parade in solidarity. And it was just very impressive. I think the police department is just leading on this. They were participants. They had signs, and they were participants in the protest. They weren't just leading it from a transportation standpoint. They were really. It was really a unifying moment, and I was very impressed. Thank you.
Well said, Kevin. Thank you very much for that. With the end of those reports from council, then we'll move into item number 3, which is our consent agenda. First, I'd like to ask any council members, are there any pieces of the consent agenda that you'd like to extract for specific discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into approval of the consent agenda, which includes, and I want to make special note of this, consideration of draft resolutions to Molly Gwynn and Jim McChesney for service on the Historic Preservation Commission. These are drafts that will be finalized by staff and presented at a later time, and also the meeting minutes from recent council meetings. So is there a motion with respect to the consent agenda?
I move to approve all items listed and considered routine on the consent agenda.
I
Is there a
second.
Motion by Kevin Drum and second by Lydia Bosch. With respect to approving the consent agenda, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved unanimously. I'd like to move into item number 4, the regular meeting agenda. And before doing so and calling on Jeff Sanborn, I would just point out to the public that an earlier version of the agenda for this meeting had discussion of our potential street dining in our work session today, which will follow this meeting. However, because of the fine development of that idea, we've moved it to this meeting so that we can consider approval of this dining resolution later in this meeting. The work session agenda will be held, and it will include whatever the council member wishes to discuss, but some of the topics include looking at our small area plans, consideration also of the meeting time for work sessions in the future, and some thoughts regarding Pinehurst as a tree city and protecting our heritage of that, and any other things we can add to the work agenda as we go along to that. So at this point, I'd like to go to item 4, though. And Jeff Sanborn, would you like to introduce this resolution? And then I have a few comments after you do. Thank you.
I'd be very happy to. Thank you, John. We've got several reappointments to our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And I know that all these folks are probably eager to get back to work. They've been kind of been put on hold pending the results of our long-range comprehensive plan. Look at what the priorities were for our community, and then our budgeting process this year. Because they were put on hold for a couple of years, we thought it would appropriate to pick up with renominating all of the previous members of the committee so that they can continue their work. What we've done is we've staggered the terms a little bit so we don't wind up with everybody's terms ending in the same year. So what we'd like you to consider is renomination or reappointment of Tom Campbell, Mike Ventola, Mark Wagner, Paul Sale, and Melissa Watford. In the case of Tom Campbell, Mike Ventola, and Mark Wagner, the terms we're proposing would end in 2021. For Paul Sale and Melissa Watford, the terms would end in 2023. And then in addition, we'd like you to also consider appointment of Darren Burke, our planning director, to this committee as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. This is an opportunity when these reappointments occur for those members of the committee that are being appointed new or reappointed to ask any questions of the village council that they might wish to do. And for the council members to ask any questions of the members of the committee. And I know that Tom is here. Tom, you've chaired this committee for quite some time. And I think that I see Paul, and I think Michael may be along with us as well. I'm not sure about Melissa, but
Melissa's on.
Tom, maybe you'd like, yeah. So Tom, would you like to say anything further about the committee? And then we'll take some questions back and forth if there are.
I guess I'd like to say that it's been an honor to service not only the bike and pedestrian plan, but the Greenway plan since 2002. And we've had great cooperation. In fact, Jency Fallon, one of the previous mayors, was on that committee in 2002 moving forward. And I remember the superintendent of golf, Bob, last name's gone. He's superintendent. Farron. Bob Farron started back in 2002 with us. And, you know, we've had a good group to work together. We went out initially and walked all over the village trying to come up with the places we'd like to take it. And of course that was changed in 2015 when we went to the bike and pedestrian plan from the Greenway or committee. So I'd just like to say I'm happy to serve as long as I think I told Mark Wagner I'll serve until I get kicked off. So yeah, it's an honor. It's an honor to do it, and it's dear to my heart. I really like what we've done so far and look forward to the future.
Well said, Tom. Thank you. Council members, do you have any questions of Tom or Paul or Michael or Melissa on the phone? I'll look at Jane. Anything you'd like to ask anybody?
Well, I'm very looking very much forward to the committee being able to meet again. I've only been to one meeting, but it's a lot of very enthusiastic and knowledgeable people who care a lot about Pinehurst. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Kevin, any questions for the committee members?
No, I'd just like to give them some work. They've been idle for a long time. I think Tom would agree.
Good. Lydia?
Ditto Jane, ditto Kevin. Thanks for serving you guys.
Yeah. Judy?
Thank you, Tom, for your leadership. Appreciate you and your committee.
Well done. Now, how about other members of the nominee platform here? Paul, I'm looking at your picture here. Do you have any questions of the council today?
Not really. I can just tell you, living off Linden Road, I'm just amazed by the utilization the Greenway is getting these days. It's terrific to see so many people using it on a day in, day out basis. So I think there's lots of enthusiasm and lots of potential for this committee to do really good work.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. I think we heard that Michael may be on a phone with us today. If you are, Michael, do you have any questions? Go over to, are you there, Michael?
No, I don't think.
Okay. Melissa?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm excited to be back on the committee after a little hiatus, and I agree with what Paul said. I think that the community even understands how important walkability is, bikeability is, especially during this time. We've seen such an increase, so I think there's lots of opportunities for us to get back to work and really look at areas that we can make safer for walking and biking.
Okay. I suppose Mark Wagner might have something to say too, but we hear from him a lot. Does he? Mark, anything from you, if you're here? Yeah.
I really don't have anything to add to what everybody else said. I appreciate the committee too, and all the dedication they've put in over the years. And kind of like Kevin said, you know, we're ready to get back to work, so we're looking forward to that.
Thank you, Mark. Good
Thank
to hear
you.
that. Right. Now, is there a motion for item number 4 then on today's agenda?
This is
Jane?
now.
Jane?
I move to approve Resolution 2018, appointing members to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Jane Hogeman, second by Lydia Bosch. All in favor of these appointments signify by saying aye, please. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes unanimously. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tom, and all members of the committee. We wish you good luck, and we'll be in touch.
Terrific. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for your service.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 5, discuss and consider ordinance adopting a budget for the village of Pinehurst. Jeff?
Thank you, John. We are at the end of a one-year cycle. What it takes to plan a year's budget and a 5-year plan. But what this is all about is the ordinance that will allow us to continue our operations into next year, starting July 1st. And the budget that we're asking you to pass is identical to the one that I presented to you back in late April, with one exception, and that was the change that you asked for to not include the half-cent property tax rate change that we had recommended back in April. And that was based primarily on concerns about the impact in our community of the COVID economic impact and what that's doing to our residents and business owners and property owners here in the village of Pinehurst. And so what we have in this ordinance is a budget that totals $21,261,917, both obviously on the revenue side and the expenditure side. I'm available to answer any questions, as is Brooke, if you have any at this time, but otherwise it's there for your consideration to approve this budget tonight. And if not, then we can bring it back next meeting.
Okay. I would just like to thank you, Jeff, for all the work the staff put into this and working with the council over a couple of months. And of course, you all started on this back in February, actually. We think the budget's come together well. And just to remind the public that, as Jeff mentioned, we did take away a increase in the property tax for this year. And on the other hand, we have approved some projects to go forward as the fiscal year starts in July 1st. But we've deferred many others to see how revenues come along, especially in the sales tax area. And we won't know the results of that for some months. So other programs that are in the budget will only be approved as revenues are seen to be supporting them. And we won't know that and make decisions on that till October or later as the year moves along. So we're being very cautious with the budget. But it is a budget that's been well put together, I think. Let me just make sure that Brooke, if she has any last minute comments about what's in front of us here before I take questions from the council and look for a resolution. Anything, Brooke?
No, sir. I'm comfortable with you proceeding.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Are there
you.
any questions from the council then about the budget ordinance for 2021 from the council members? Anybody have any comments or questions? I see and hear none. Is there a resolution for the consideration and the adoption of the budget for 2021, agenda item number 5?
I move to approve ordinance 20-03, adopting the Village of Pinehurst fiscal year 2021 budget.
I have a motion. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
Motion by Kevin Drum and a second by Jane Hogeman for agenda item number 5, approving the ordinance of the fiscal year 2021 budget for the Village of Pinehurst. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Jeff and Brooke.
Thank you very
Item
much.
number 6, Jeff, let's go to these budget amendments. Why don't we proceed with item number 6 then, please?
Thank you, John. We've got 2 budget amendments for your consideration, and they're both linked in that they will enable us to do just a bit more Powell bill resurfacing of roads during this fiscal year. We're trying to take advantage of the opportunity that our contractor is kind of he's a captured audience, given the fact that NCDOT is not doing any resurfacing work right now, given their budget problems. And so I'm going to hand this off to Mike, and he can discuss both of these budget amendments with you in turn.
Good.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. So the first item has to do with our Powell bill funds. Back on January the 30th, Moore County Public Utilities experienced a sewer force main rupture on Lake Hills Road at the intersection of Lake Hills and Thunderbird Lane. Unfortunately, that break occurred underneath our asphalt road, and the county was required to cut the road to repair the pipe, which was done later that same day. But also, unfortunately, it caused some pretty significant damage to our roadway. The county was working with their insurance company and obtaining some quotes from some contractors in order to fix the roadway back. But that was taking a little bit of time, and we were growing increasingly concerned with not necessarily the asphalt, but the subgrade, because the pipe burst underground, and we started seeing some settling in some areas on the roadway. And obviously, that's one of the major accesses into the lake area. So luckily for us, our resurfacing contractor, Riley Paving, was working just right up the road, paving some roads for us. So we went ahead and authorized them to fix the area on Lake Hills in order to get it safely passable. And they did the work in mid-February. We're very satisfied with the work, and they provided us with an invoice for the repairs, which totaled $11,625. We paid that invoice, and because the cause of the damage was from the county's force main, the county agreed to reimburse us for those costs, which I believe they have already paid. And so I believe this first item is simply to allow those funds to that we have received from the county to be placed back into our Powell bill account.
Okay. All right. Are there questions of Mike or other staff from the council on this particular budget amendment?
I just say good job, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And recapturing that money. I know it was very touch and go there at the beginning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a motion then for agenda item number 6, please?
I move to approve ordinance 20-04, amending the general fund budget for reimbursement proceeds received from Moore County Utilities.
I have a motion from Judy Davis. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay.
Motion by Judy Davis, a second by Jane Hogeman. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'm so
Any
sorry.
opposed?
I'm turning this
I
on.
hear ayes, but no opposition.
Yeah.
So budget amendment as an item number 6 is approved unanimously. So we'll move down to item number 7 then, Mike and Jeff.
Sure. So this item, so we have in our current fiscal year budget $200,000 budgeted for road patching, and that's in our streets and grounds contracted services line item. And that pot of money is really used, when I say patching, it's for small items to fix potholes, or if we have roots that are making the asphalt pop up, we fix those. Our costs actually have gone down a little bit this year from previous years, and we're estimating that we're going to have about $60,000 of that $200,000 remaining. We've also got some money left in our Powell bill fund. We've paved all of the roads that we said we were going to pave. We've actually added a couple to it that have also been paid, but we still have some more, and we'd like to use that money to go ahead and, as Jeff said, pave some more roads while we have our contractor available. So what we'd like to do is move that $60,000 from streets and grounds contracted services, which was in there for road patching, move it over to Powell bill and actually use it for road patching. The same thing, but in Powell bill, we actually patch the roads before we overlay them. We fix the areas that have cracks or holes or things out before we resurface them. So it's really just moving it from one fund to another for the same purpose of patching roads. It's just in this case, we would patch them right before we overlay them. The other item with that is when I presented the bids from Riley Paving to the council back in August, I think, we had asked for the manager to be able to approve up to $900,000 for Riley Paving to do work. And we would ask that go up now to $1,050,000. We've got enough money to do that and stay within the budget. The remainder of the money that's in our Powell bill account we use for road shoulder restoration and striping. But both of those costs actually came in less than we were anticipating. So we'd like to move the money over and increase the amount that Jeff can approve for Riley Paving to get some work done, hopefully before the end of the fiscal year on June the 30th, which is 2 weeks away.
All right. Are there questions for Mike from council members? Jane, did I recall maybe you had a question on this? No.
I did.
I heard Lydia.
Oh, I did, and not particularly on this, but Mike, can you just briefly tell us how do we decide which roads to pave, to resurface?
Sure. So we have a committee set up. We did it this year. It was with me, Jeff Batten, Jeff Sanborn, and Megan Skellerup, who works in my office. We met. The village does a pavement condition survey every 3 years, hires an outside engineering firm that does that, and every road segment within the village is given a PCR, a pavement condition rating. And this would be the second year that we have used the updated pavement condition survey. So last year, we literally started at the bottom and worked our way up the worst rated roads in the village. And this year we started where we left off last year and worked our way up from there. Now, we do make some modifications if we're paving roads in an area. We may add some to that we know are in bad shape, but we really rely heavily on an independent analysis of our roads and the scores that our roads get, and we pave the worst ones in general.
Okay. That was the answer I was hoping you would give me, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of Mike on this?
Do you have a feeling like you think we'll get 100% of this done by the end of the year?
They are telling us they can, weather permitting. So
Okay. That caveat, okay.
we certainly hope so, but we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Okay. And a lot of this is with that slurry seal?
No, this will be resurfacing with
Oh,
asphalt.
resurfacing, okay.
Done before we go in, we patch it, and we actually overlay it with 1.25 inches, I think, of asphalt.
Okay, great.
Mike, I think you probably have a long list and you know exactly where you want to go, but are you looking for suggestions for the next year?
Well, we already have our list developed for the next year, but we're always taking suggestions to add to it.
All right, thanks very much.
The neighborhood of Westchester Circle is very pleased with their new road.
Good.
Good to know.
Glad to hear.
Yeah,
On item number 7, then this budget amendment, is there a motion to approve item number 7?
I move to approve ordinance 20-05, amending the general fund budget to increase Powell bill funding for additional road resurfacing and authorize the village manager to execute change orders with Riley Paving for additional road resurfacing at the original unit pricing with the overall annual amount not to exceed $1,050,000 in sum total.
Thank you, Lydia. Is there a second to that?
I second that. I second that.
Motion by Lydia Bosch, a second by Kevin Drum. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to item number 8, which discussion and approval of library needs assessment ETC survey. I think, Jeff, you may have some comments here, but I know Natalie will certainly have that. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
We can't hear you, Jeff.
All right. I'm just going to go ahead and pass it to Natalie.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. So on your agenda item, you have the a memo there that is from me. And basically it indicates that I have revised the ETC Library Needs Assessment Survey cover letter and the Needs Assessment Survey per the direction that you provided at your last council meeting on May 26th. I received some additional comments and have incorporated as many of those as possible. And in the memo, there was one point of a little bit of disagreement between council members as to how you wanted to handle certain information in the survey. And so if I can, I'll pull up the screen real quick. And while I'm pulling the screen up, I also want to mention, can you tell me what you see on your screen?
The survey.
The survey.
Okay, good. I'm playing with 3 different screens and I saw something different on my screen. So I wanted to make sure. So you can see the Library Service Needs Assessment June 2020 at the top. Is that correct?
No, now it's a Microsoft background
just-
screen.
Now
There you go.
you can see it?
Yes.
Survey.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the survey.
Okay. I'm going to have to turn my head to look at the survey because it's on a different monitor. But the one point that I wanted to get some clarification from council on is the description under library funding. Some council members were interested in putting a minimum range on this. Others didn't feel that that was appropriate. With that said, I think that to me was my only understanding of the differences of opinion among council members about the wording of the survey until I received some communication from council members over the last couple of days. So when I put this agenda item together, when I placed the agenda item on the regular meeting, I felt that there was consensus from the council on how you wanted to proceed. After you ended your last meeting on May 26th, I know that there's some still questions unresolved there. So I know council will want to discuss that as well right now. But as it stands, what was put in your packet was based on feedback that I received and incorporated. And the real question is, although as I mentioned, the one point is in the first paragraph, this discussion about a minimum amount of investment as opposed to saying up to a certain amount. So if I could get some consensus on how you'd like to handle that, or if you would like to talk about some of the other concerns, I'm happy to do that as well. So I'll leave that up to you, John, how you want to handle it.
I think we certainly did have a lot of discussion about this particular item that you've highlighted, Natalie, over the past several weeks. And it seemed to me like we had a consensus that this was the best way, not the only way, but a reasonable way to express this initiative, which is really to try to focus on the potential cost, the maximum potential cost of the library and what might be required for that. Overall, with respect to the survey and the letter, I'm reasonably happy with the way they read right now. And I do think that we need to try to get on with the survey because we do have some timing constraints, which shouldn't necessarily drive our decision. But on the other hand, it seems to me our primary focus right now is to do things right. And we do need to know, and we've expressed some concern for some months now, we do need to know a lot more about what the library service needs of the residents of Pinehurst really are. And this survey is really our most effective way, I think, to determine that, given the more or less statistically valid way that the survey will be conducted. There are other issues which we can discuss, and we will tonight, but my view at the moment is subject to some more or less minor changes to wording that the council may have tonight. that line you've just highlighted being one of those. I hope we can move this forward and get that information which we need to provide a good base for decision making. And that allows us to consider a whole host of other things that should be on the table as we look at what we need to do for library services in the village of Pinehurst. So with that, let me call for some questions. Lydia, did I hear your voice? Or you're off camera right now?
I think that was Judy.
Judy?
Yeah,
Judy?
so I think I was the person that wanted to prefer to range here, like 5 to 8 or 6 to 8 million. By the time we get this done, it's likely to be 8 million if we dally much longer on this. But I'm going to step aside on that comment, and well, I think this is at the top end. You know, let's go for it. I'll withdraw my concern.
Okay. Well, to me, John, that was the only difference that I was aware of among council members based on what I put in your agenda packet. So I think it addressed all of Jane's concerns with the survey, questions that you had yourself, Lydia and Judy. And then Kevin has, I think Kevin has some concerns or questions that he would like to have discussed as well. I would like to say this. I do think it's really important, and I communicated this to you via email this week earlier too, is that I do think that while this survey only focuses on library services and library needs, I think that it is in council's best interest, and I believe you believe the same too, to take the approach and understand that we're only looking at library, but any decisions that the council makes relative to library services or the library board makes relative to library services is likely and can potentially impact our archives operations, bookshop operations. So, I think Kevin has raised the point that, we need to consider holistically the situation as a whole. And I completely agree with that there, those impacts will have to be considered when you're evaluating which solutions are viable or aren't viable or more advantageous than less advantageous. But I think that in order for us to get to the point to where we actually start evaluating really the full gamut of potential solutions, I think we have to get the statistically valid survey of what our residents' needs really are, because those are going to then point us into different directions potentially, depending on what the feedback is. So,
all right. Let's do this. I think each of the council members has some things they'd like to say and react to, and I want to make sure we get all that feedback. Okay. What I would like to do, Lydia, I think you had a little bit of a framework that you had mentioned to us. Would you mind identifying that a little more or speak to this issue? And then I'd like to call on Kevin to go over some of his concerns. Lydia?
An analogy I've used right now, I've said there's a curtain and we're on one side of the curtain and the public's out there, and we're trying to solicit from the public what they want. We've done that through the three sources of input up till now. And then we've got this. Once we have all of the public's input, then we go to the other side of the curtain. And that's where you've got all of your stakeholders, and every option would be on the table. And I've identified stakeholders as the Gibbons Library Board, the resort, Moore County, Southern Pines, Aberdeen. But we first got to understand what the public wants before we go start working with the other stakeholders and consider all of the options and working with them. And I think we are in a great position with this input to then be able to go and collaborate or cooperate or communicate or whatever you want to call it with everyone else who has an interest in library services and that building and the archives or museum, whatever it is. But we will be able to be in the driver's seat as we work with the stakeholders to come up with the best option, considering everybody's interest. Is that it, John?
Yeah, well, yeah, you had expressed that, I think, to all of us just very recently, and I thought it was an interesting way to summarize that, and to treat some of the concerns which I have had and others have had too about, what's the big picture here. And I think that's one of Kevin's major ideas that he'd like to express. So Kevin, at this point, I'd like to have you make whatever comments you would wish to make with respect to the survey and the letter and how we could move forward on this.
Yeah, I think Natalie has done a great job of trying to fix the library needs consulting document, and I believe you've done a great job of trying to correct this survey based on the needs assessment you had to fix, and then this is built on that. And I agree. I don't think we're looking at it holistically. I see I'm in a minority here, but I don't think we're looking at we're really looking at the entire set of options. It doesn't feel right to me to not look at the entire set of options. So rather than beat a dead horse, I want to read the Articles of Incorporation, a brief statement, not the whole thing. This thing was started and funded by Sarah Givens Larsons, Richard Tufts, and Eric Nelson. And the purpose for which the corporation was organized was to establish, own, and operate and maintain a public library, and do all things and acts in relation to the proper management and operation thereof. And it was also to own, maintain, and operate a public museum for the display of relics, antiques, and the like. And I think it's important to understand the intent. We didn't exist when this was formed. Our municipality didn't exist in 1980. A lot of people don't know that. That's why this asset was privately funded. I believe we should fund a library, and I believe we should fund a museum. And I think we're asking for input on one aspect of it and not the other. And I'm uncomfortable with that because I think both are equally important, our culture and a library. And I'm uncomfortable with the lack of looking at it holistically. Further, it says that the corporation was formed operating exclusively for scientific, charitable, literary, and educational purposes, and no part of its earnings shall inure to the benefit of any person or corporation. So it's real important that this, quote, private organization looks so much like a public organization. It's pretty much a public organization before the municipality was formed. And my issue is I want to support figure out how to support both. And I'm not sure this survey does that. So it's real important to me that all options are on the table, including investing in the present site and improving its conditions. And I'm a little concerned that this seems to look at it down a singular path, and I'm very uncomfortable with it. But I do think there's data to be grabbed. And Natalie, I think you've done a good job of getting that singular data on the library. But I don't think this holistically gets the public involved with the bigger decision. And I guess we'll have to do that on our own. So that is my concern, and I thought it was important to add perspective on why this has happened the way it is. A lot of people don't understand we didn't exist until 1980, and this is the only way you could form a public library when there's no municipality. And I just think perspective is a valuable thing right now as we move on this project, and it's real important that all options are on the table that work in the best interest of the public. And I'm just a little concerned about the singular focus of the needs assessment, and I'd like to say, Natalie, I think you did a great job. So it's nothing to do. It has to do with you tried to fix it, and so I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just really concerned when you don't look at things holistically and long term, you could end up in some trouble. And
Kevin.
Yeah.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
The part you just read, won't that be relevant once we get all the information from the public? Won't that be relevant?
Yes, I agree. But I'm not saying this won't be helpful. I'm saying it's partial and it's not holistic enough. And I'm okay with that. We're going to get some data on the library needs, and that's good.
But my question is, everything you read about the founding of Gibbons, to me, that seems like that's going to be relevant as we decide a way forward. It's just because you think we're not incorporating it now. To me, it's highly relevant.
Sure. I wish I could talk to these people, and I can't. I wish I could, and that's what I just thought I don't want to belabor the point. I just wanted to make that point, and I'm done.
So can I ask a question too, Kevin?
Yeah.
I think you bring up a good point in terms of, I think it's good information to let the public know, make sure it's clear that the library was formed as a private organization because the government didn't exist at the time. And I think that would be something that we should maybe consider including in that background information report that we drafted, so that information is readily available to residents who would fill out the survey, because we point them to that online. So it's at least another way to get that information out to people. Would council be supportive of doing that?
I certainly would.
I'm supportive of anything transparent.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything to do transparency of the public.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll go back to that background information document. Last council meeting, everybody seemed pretty pleased with it. I'll go ahead and insert the language that Kevin has referred to. He was kind enough to share some of his files with me. And so I've got that information at my fingertips, Kevin, and I'll put that in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth noting that, a good number of years have transpired since we first became a municipality. And I know that the library, becoming a public library, has been talked about. There's actually a resolution that we call this a public library, although it never became part of the municipal organization. And there was a library working group formed in 2018 to look at the library. So I think that it's not surprising that is what we're looking at. That was the scope at the time.
Yeah, I'm familiar, and I resigned from that working group because it was working down a singular path. So it's been going down a snowball going downhill down a singular path for a long time, and I'm just trying to do my best to serve the public right now.
I think what it sounds like to me is that I think it would be helpful if other council members would maybe give some reassurances that that the council does feel like all options are on the table, and that it could be something that none of us have even considered yet. You don't know, so
I'd appreciate that.
I think that might be helpful.
Yeah. I for one certainly feel that the phrase "all options are on the table" is correct, and that as we go forward and evaluate what this survey brings back to us, along with a host of other issues related to what the issues are for library services, how does that affect the current building? How does that affect, therefore, the archives and the bookstore? I think those are all things that will come into the equation as we come up with the best decision we can make. So, yeah, I tend to agree with that phrase. I note that Jane hasn't had a chance to speak yet. I'm guessing she would like to. Jane, would you care to comment on all this?
Thanks, John. I have heard a lot from Kevin's comments, and especially background, but also the overview. And I also concur that we've got a lot of different aspects of this thing and a lot of different possibilities to look at and consider. This is one puzzle piece. It's not the whole picture, but I think that the members of council now are in particularly in a better position, having had Kevin's input, and for me, understanding it better than I did, to see what all the different possibilities are and to work toward the best one of them to put our resources and the public's interests in the best possible position, looking at the big picture. And I think that's what we all want to do, but I know that's what I want to do.
Thank you, Jane. Very well said. Any other comments from council members? And then I'll see if other staff members have any further comment on this. But are we agreed that the language of this letter and the survey are acceptable as they are, or are there proposals to make any further changes to those? Any other comments? Judy, please.
I have one question of Natalie. You know, on the cover letter, it talks about you can complete this by going to a URL. I assume that not just anybody can go there. Yeah. You have to, there's some technique from the survey instrument that will get you to that, right?
Correct. So if someone who was not sent the survey tried to fill it out, they would actually be allowed to fill it out, but their results would not be counted in the report results that we get, because they do a cross check of the physical addresses of the households that were surveyed. So if they send it to 70 Fields Road and 70 Fields Road fills it out, but then 75 Fields Road tries to fill it out, they'll be allowed to fill it out, but their results will not be tabulated in the results that you receive.
And Natalie, you had told me that we will see those side results, but they won't be considered in the statistically valid survey results, correct?
The survey company said they can provide them if we want them.
Okay.
And that's up to you. I mean, I don't know that you would do anything with them, but yeah, we can ask for them if we want them.
Then it'd be a non-statistically valid survey.
Correct. Correct. Exactly. Yeah, but that's how that'll work. So if council's okay, then I'll make the change to that section and incorporate that language from their articles of incorporation. I would like your approval to go ahead and get the background information uploaded too, so all that can get put up on the Engage Pinehurst website in advance of the survey actually dropping in the mail, should you choose to approve the survey today.
Okay.
Do we need a motion?
Any other? I'm sorry, Kevin? No?
That wasn't me. That wasn't me.
I'm not hearing any other comments or suggestions.
Yeah, John, I'd like to just make a brief comment. Maybe this goes without saying, but after having read all the commentary and dialogue on this important subject, maybe it would help to kind of summarize, what I think I'm hearing from Kevin, because as always, he's got some very insightful and important input. And when we have talked about all options being on the table up to this point, it's usually been around the question of the library, what a future library might be, and where it might be, how big it might be. Is it going to be an existing building? Might it be the existing building? Might be a renovation? Might be a new facility? What size will it be? How will it be financed? Is there going to be some sort of a public-private partnership? Those are things that we have had rolling around in our head when we said, all options are on the table. And I think and Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Kevin is adding to this important discussion is that it's also important for us to leave all options on the table with regard to the future of the bookstore and the archives. Mm-hmm. And as we proceed down this path, we need to remain open-minded about those two important pieces of the currently existing organization, and make sure that we make the right decisions for them as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. And I appreciate your reframing it better than I said it, because I think I've been trying to say that for 2 years, but I can't seem to get it across.
But
You got it across, Kevin. I heard it.
And I think we have to respect the prerogatives, though, of other entities as well, among all these stakeholders.
You do.
I think we need to respect the public good.
Okay.
Agreed.
Jeff, very, very helpful. Thank you very much for that and for all of the comments from the council and the staff going back some months now on this development for this particular part of the library assessment. I believe we have a consensus to go forward with this survey as amended slightly by Natalie's comment. It'll be in addition to the fact book, or what do we call that little, the history?
Calling it library
Background information.
It's a background information.
Right. Okay.
Background information.
All right. So I won't necessarily ask for a vote, but I do think we have consensus to move forward. Is there any objection to moving forward with the survey then in the letter as they are? Thank you all very much.
Great.
We'll go forward. Natalie, thank you.
Thank you. And I do thank all the council members for all your input. I know this has been a long road that we've traveled, I would say. I was trying to figure out how to articulate it. But I think we've learned along the way, and I think it's gotten better. And I think it's gotten better because each of you have really given good thought and input into it. So thank you very much.
If I could just add that I am 100% behind financially supporting the library and financially supporting the museum. So just a personal opinion. I just want to put that on the table. I want everybody to know that. But I think it's crazy us not to be responsible for this. But that's just a personal opinion. We're going to get the public's opinion, and I just make that clear.
Great. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie.
The road continues on, Natalie.
Yes, I know. We're not
not at the end of the beginning. Maybe we're at the end of the beginning or the beginning of the beginning, but we've got a lot of good things to do yet on this project. Very important as it is.
Yes, I'll view it as we have reached a crossroad. How's that? I think we've reached a crossroad.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, discuss and consider a policy regarding the National Historic Landmarks status of Pinehurst. A few introductory remarks from myself, and then Jeff, we'll open this up to you and the council members. As Jeff mentioned earlier, this is the 125th anniversary of the village of Pinehurst. And really late last year, or even in the middle of last year, the previous council recognized that date, as many of us did. And as the year went along and this year began, the current council felt that there should be ways to honor that 125th year. And Jeff Sanborn spoke earlier today about some tangible things we're doing in a celebratory sense to accomplish that mission of identifying our anniversary. At the same time, there are issues around from time to time that need clarification. And whether it's ordinances or other issues that come around, there has been a question for some few years in the public's mind about what is our national landmark status? What is it all about? There's not a lot of information in the public about it. And so the council has felt that we needed to prepare a policy that for the public and for all of us to understand identifies that we are a national landmark, that we respect that we have a wonderful history going back 125 years, and certainly since 1996 when the national landmark status was granted. But it would be helpful if there was a policy that spoke to that, and there never really has been a policy that spoke to that. So as the year began, with council approval and with a tremendous amount of research by Lydia Bosch as to all the documents that set up our landmark status and other histories of Pinehurst, we set about developing this policy, and it's here today as a statement of a celebration of 125 years and a celebration of our landmark status since 1996. It's guided by federal statutes and National Park Service statutes that apply to our national landmark status. And we hope that this will do a lot to clarify to the public we honor our past, we're living in the future as well, and we want to make sure that people understand that the landmark is very important to us and that we want to carry that forward in the next 125 years as well. So with that, Jeff, you may wish to speak to the documents, the resolution and the policy, and we'll have a bit of commentary, I think, maybe a minor change or two to the documents from the council, but please go ahead.
Thank you, John. Very well said. I appreciate the introduction. You kind of covered all the bases there. But you know, I do think that this is a very important document, and I think it's very important for the kind of some of the reasons that John highlighted there. There's a lot of confusion in our community about what the National Historic Landmark means and what development that happens around our core area, what type of impact development decisions might have with regard to our National Historic Landmark. And I think one of the most important things that I think Lydia uncovered as we have been looking at this question over the past several months was a very important piece of federal policy that recognizes that National Historic Landmark districts have to be they have to evolve. They have to keep pace with modern life to an appropriate level. And there has to be a balance, in other words, because if they don't, they're going to get left in the past, and they won't be relevant, and they're going to be forgotten because they're not vital, they're not vibrant, they're not, they're not places that people want to be around and be part of. So this policy, I think most fundamentally is a recognition and a statement by the council, if you adopt it, that you as a council and future councils will properly balance the vital preservation of the core characteristics of our National Historic Landmark District with the accommodation of modern life. As well as with private property owners' rights, which we always have to honor given the law anyway. But I think that's what it's all about, and I welcome any comments or questions or suggestions that any of you might have if you want to try to improve the documents that we have here for your consideration.
Jeff, I don't know, you want to bring the documents up on the screen? We were talking
I think
earlier about
Beth can bring it up.
Okay, we were talking earlier about other drafts and inserting the 125th anniversary in the whereas resolution, and I think that's the only addition that should be there, and I think you have a way to accommodate that if we want to approve this tonight with that one change. But maybe there are other questions or comments from council members, which could happen right now as these documents are being brought up.
My only comment is I use the federal law to guide me on the Historic Rewrite Committee, and I was fascinated by reading the federal law, and I love it, the intent of the federal law in that language. I was fascinated that the Park Service figured out a way to use modern materials when repairing those lodges in Yellowstone. They used things that looked like wood and had the same texture as wood, but they weren't wood. And it was shocking to me that the Park Service was leading in the use of modern materials. And I think it surprised people that some of the language I got serving on that committee came from the National Park Service you don't want things that are, aluminum siding. It has to look and have the look and feel, the touch. I forget the terminology. Judy might remember it. But it was incredible language, and you honor the past, you live in the present and the future. And I really am impressed with this document. Thank you.
I think it's important to note too, that while these documents are stating our general policy for the whole of Pinehurst in the historic area, that we have our guidelines for the Historic Preservation Commission, which guide many of the steps that they take. So while these are coming up, are there any other questions or comments? Lydia, I'm sure you might wish to make a comment on this.
Yes, John, thank you so much. There were two phrases in the federal regulations that were really important to me as we were working through this, and we've got them in the policy. And one of them observes preservation precepts. We're supposed to observe preservation precepts. We've got that in our policy. We're supposed to respect our historic character. We've got this in the policy. But another thing I want to point out as I've been working on this is I believe there's been so much misunderstanding within the village about what our National Historic Landmark District is and what it can do and what it cannot do. And I really want to encourage the public that if they still have questions or still have concerns, that they contact staff, they contact me, because, I mean, you guys know how hard I've worked on this, and I've challenged you to trip me up with tough questions, and it's helped me work through this. But I'm confident that any question the public has, we are able to answer it. And I would like to be able to answer those rather than have the misunderstandings and the miscommunications swirl like they seem to have done for a period of time in there.
Thank you, Lydia. Jane, did you have any questions or suggestions on these? Microphone, please.
Sorry, you'd think I'd learn. I just want to congratulate Lydia and thank her for all the work she's done digging into this and providing such a useful clarification, such a practical clarification of how the law is actually meant to work. And it's a wonderful guide, which will be able to be of use and help to us going forward for many years. So it's a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy, any comments from you?
Just to echo, I mean, I think it's wonderful to have a succinct policy that we all can understand and that has some teeth to it, and relevance and practicality. So again, thanks for all the uncovering work you did, Lydia, and Jeff and John for working with attorneys to put all this together. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure.
I think
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Lydia.
You're so welcome.
If council would agree, if you would allow Lydia and myself to work with Jeff Sanborn on how to include the 125th anniversary in the whereases here, probably the first or second whereas, we will do that. Just a simple reference, but it does help frame part of the reason that we're producing this document. And if that's acceptable, we could still approve this tonight with that one caveat to come. Would that be acceptable to the council?
It is to me.
Yes.
Seeing that. All right.
Yes.
Then with that caveat, is there a motion to approve this policy regarding our National Historic Landmark status? Agenda item 9.
I would be happy to make that motion. I move to approve Resolution 2019, approving a policy for development and other improvements within the Pinehurst National Historic Landmark District with the addition of appropriate language that recognizes our 125th anniversary.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'd like to second it.
Motion by Lydia Bosch and a second by Jane Hogeman. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is unanimous. Thank you all very much. We'll work on that completion very quickly. Let's move on to agenda item number 10, which has to do with a resolution considering permitting of outdoor dining and seating in adjacent public property in the village of Pinehurst. Preamble to this, village staff and village council have been very aware by personal use of village businesses and discussion with managers of our businesses, our restaurants, our retailers, of the considerable impact that the COVID-19 episode is having and continues to have on our small business community. And like other communities across the country, we're trying to find ways to assist local businesses in ways that are appropriate and helpful, and act accordingly and as quickly as possible to do that. With that in mind, over the past couple of weeks only, the idea to allow outdoor dining on the streets of Pinehurst by those restaurants who would choose to do that has been under consideration, and several discussions have been held with our restaurant community and our retail community about that. So we have a plan here developed by Jeff Batten, Jeff Sanborn, myself to some degree, Judy to some degree, really all the council members have been involved to one degree or another. I would like to let the public know that this idea is a bit extraordinary. We are very delighted to try to do this. We believe it will help, at least on a temporary basis, our restaurant community, which is extraordinarily important to the vitality of all of our Pinehurst communities, not just the core district, but all of our area. But I was delighted to see also the support from other businesses, particularly our retailers, who, when they heard about this program, those we spoke to anyway, were very supportive of the idea that this outdoor dining experience could help our restaurants and potentially help our retailers to some degree too. There are other things which I think we need to do if we adopt this policy on outdoor dining. Other areas such as other events that we may need to help sponsor to assist our retail community and our restaurant community. Other long-term issues related to the way we publicize and work with our community to market the business experiences here in Pinehurst. And very potentially, and at the request of the retailers, some consideration as to how we could organize our parking situation a bit differently in the village to allow for some quick in and out short-term spots that might help the retailers with their customer base as well. But for the moment, those are issues we'll take up in the near future. The issue for the day today is what can we do to assist the dining experience? And for that, we'll turn this over to Jeff Sanborn or Jeff Batten for their background on these documents.
Thank you, John. John, I think you introduced the topic very well, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Batten to go over the details with you.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Yes.
All right, great. Yes, the resolution that's before you would basically permit the extension of outdoor dining, as John, you stated, onto public property for those who choose to want to do that. It is set up for Friday, Saturday nights from 5 p.m. until midnight from the standpoint of everything being completely off the street. It's from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. in terms of the dining hours or seating hours, if you will. There are a number of very, I guess, somewhat specific sections in here. I won't go through all of them, but some of the key ones, the space has to be visibly and vertically delineated. The enclosures can be by cones, barriers, ropes, planters, or other devices. We would make some of our orange cones available upon request if they need something to help them with delineating that space. Restaurateur is responsible for setting up the space and breaking it down each night, so we won't be committing any village staff. Trash removal from those spaces will be the responsibility of the restaurants, again, so that the public is not involved in that, or staff is not involved in that. We've got a caveat in here about how to store the equipment so that it's not left on the street and not really visible to the public. Has to be stored on private property, can't block any sidewalks or public parking or any buildings ingress or egress. They still have to comply, the restaurants still need to comply with the gubernatorial executive orders that are in place related to COVID. So all of those standards that have been put in place still must be carried out. Liability insurance is also a requirement that lists the village as additionally insured, just so that we are protected, the public's protected in the event something occurs that is of the making or doing of the actual restaurateur. Also, there are some specific ABC guidelines that are published by ABC Commission related to this expansion of outdoor seating, that if they are going to serve their alcohol in those designated outdoor seating areas, then on public property, then they have to comply with several ABC Commission requirements. We've got a temporary outdoor seating extension use policy, or acknowledgement, that we're going to ask them to sign. Basically, it's the rules of the land of how we're going to do this, just so that everybody understands, has read those, agreed to those in terms of the restaurants, so that there's no misunderstanding or of what our intent was or anything of that nature. Beyond that, I think that pretty much covers it. The way it would generally work is I would likely be the person to meet with each of the restaurants, and we would work together to delineate the spaces, outdoor public spaces that could be utilized for extension of outdoor dining. Probably utilize just a small dot of paint to delineate the four corners, so that each restaurant knows where their boundaries are. Beyond that, it's fairly straightforward in the resolution. As a side, not in the resolution, we're working on some concepts to help inform the public that the parking limitations will go into effect, on Friday and Saturday evening, starting at 5 o'clock, for the areas where the extended outdoor dining or outdoor seating areas would be established. So hopefully that will help some of the public understand that by 5 o'clock they'll need to vacate those parking spaces. We'll kind of have to see how that works and play that a little bit by ear there. I believe that generally covers most of it. The limitations on this resolution, it's got a sunset, if you will. It is at the end of phase 2 limits, according to the governor's phase 2 limit plan, or phase 2 restrictions. When that comes to an end, this also comes to an end. If for some reason the phase 3 restrictions include things that are also similar to phase 2 with regards to outdoor dining and those kinds of things, we may have to revisit the resolution on June 23rd to maybe make some changes or adjustments, if we in fact know by then what potential phase 3 is going to look like from the governor's standpoint. So, but from now until the end of phase 2, which right now looks until June 26th, this would be the resolution that would govern those outdoor seating areas.
Very well said, Jeff, and thanks for working out these details so quickly. You have a lot of knowledge of our business community all over town, and the way things can work in the core area as well, and you've really put this together quite nicely. I think there are probably a number of technical questions, operating questions from the council, and I'd call on those right now. Jane, did you have anything about this you'd like to ask Jeff about?
Press your button.
I have it backwards on my forehead so I can. I had some questions about how the spaces were going to be cleaned up so that in the morning everything was spick and span and those kinds of things. But they've all been addressed in this document, and I'm comfortable with it.
Thank you. Judy?
I think this is a terrific expansion of dining services for our community. A lot of people are not comfortable about going back inside restaurants, but I think that many more will be much more comfortable sitting outside. So I think this is a wonderful boost that this community needs. Kevin can tell us exactly, but the hospitality industry has been one of the hardest hit in the United States across the nation. So anything we can do to help these guys boost their revenues and remain vital as a business is definitely something we want to support and do. Happy to help.
I'm going clockwise around my screen, and Kevin, you're up, and I know you have quite a lot of good thoughts on this.
Well, no, I just want to thank you, John and Judy, for taking leadership on this. I was uncomfortable, obviously, taking leadership on this, and I really appreciate it. And I think having Jeff Batten do the details, I think that is a heck of a benefit. Having him cross the T's and dot the I's, and you know, I really appreciate it. I think the industry appreciates it. And I don't know if everyone knows, people, because that temporary rule from ABC, people that have private property can use their parking lot. It's people that don't have private property that can't expand without permission from the municipality. So this is important. And I honestly couldn't figure out, I thought there was talk of sidewalks. I think you guys have really dealt with the issues and made the sidewalks clear. I think it was clearly understood by me, and I think it's articulated well. And I like that there's a responsibility to the restaurant to clean up the space and make it presentable, you know, and all that. So I think it has everything it needs to be a success. Thank you.
Very good.
Is what I should have said.
Lydia?
I'm sure the restaurant owners appreciate this, but I hope we will do the extra step and do everything we can to promote it. Get people downtown. It's one thing for the restaurants to know about it, but it's great if we can promote it and to the public, so the public will get excited about it as well.
Yeah.
I forgot to add, John. I apologize. Sure. I really want to help the retailers. I think that it's a great thing you're doing for restaurants. So I don't know. I feel like I got to take this and parlay it into helping the retailers. So, you know, and I don't know. I've thought about creative ways of just using my board to promote retail downtown. I don't know. I'm just, if we could ever come up with a way where I could help the retail business, as you know, as well as myself through this process, I will do it.
Very good. I think as Jeff and Judy and I worked on this a little bit, and the council members understand that there are going to be some hiccups, hopefully very few, and hopefully none that are not resolvable quickly. We hope, and this takes effect, of course, as early as this Friday, if there are a restaurant or two that are ready to proceed, and we believe that there are. And having talked to these restaurateurs and some of the other retailers, it is dramatic, the financial impact that the Corona-19 has had on them. And this is a way to start to rebuild volume. It really only allows them to get back to the number of serving spaces they had before for their indoor activity. So it's not as though they're able to double or triple what their seating capacity is. There's some limitations on them under the law, but this allows them to get that extra revenue. And I have to say, you know, I think I've mentioned to some of you that I'm not sure where the email count stopped, but it was over 50 emails from people when they heard about that we were considering this, writing me and saying that they really want to see this happen. And I've got all those names, so I'm looking for about 52 people at least this weekend that I'll be in touch with that we've done this as they hoped we would. And even some commentary, believe it or not, from some residents of Pinehurst who don't live here all the time, who heard about this initiative and could understand it would be very helpful to our restaurant base, the whole business base, and hopefully our retail base as well. So with that, I think that we have a motion that would approve this resolution, and I'll ask for that to be made.
I move to approve Resolution 2020, permitting the extension of outdoor seating onto adjacent public property.
There's a motion by Judy Davis. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Kevin Drum. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Jeff Sanborn, Jeff Batten, thanks very much. Look forward to how this will roll out. Any concluding comments?
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Sanborn. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, John.
Okay, Jeff. We move into item 11 then, other business. Is there any other business that a council member would wish to bring to this regular meeting? All right, we'll be moving then to comments from attendees, and with a short break after that, when we end the regular meeting, we'll go into our work session. But Beth Dunn, are there any comments from attendees tonight?
No comments.
No comments tonight, all right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. It is now 6 o'clock. I would say that we would regroup at 6:10 and take up the work session at that time. So is there a motion to adjourn the regular meeting?
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Motion by Judy Davis. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Lydia Bosch. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in favor say no. Hearing none, the motion carries. We have adjourned the regular meeting and we'll move to the work session at 6:10. I think everybody wants a little break.
Thank you.
6:10.